Hello and welcome back to the podcast, We Are Selling. My name's Lee Woodward, your coach and host, and the author of the Complete Salesperson course. Today's program is brought to you by the Agency Portal, Australia's first listed to settled execution platform. This incredible digital platform allows us to use agency sign, agency AML, the sale funding process, commission funder, agency supplier pay, and agency settlements. Agency settlements is the Pixar partner that allows the real estate digital transaction to exist. Let's get started with today's podcast. Hello and welcome back to the podcast, We Are Selling. When I was designing this podcast originally, I thought to myself, what will I call it? And then I thought, what's the most exciting part of real estate is being at an auction and it's called on the market and the auctioneer says, we are selling. So today, you now know why we call the podcast We Are Selling. It's that peak moment of any moment. But today we're going to do a market report. What's going on? And out there, people are using the term, the market's changing. Just for your notice, it has changed. And when a market changed, you now need to go at street level, the people that are seeing eyeball to eyeball what's going on. So we're going to bring an auctioneer in from the Cooley Group. Please welcome Will Hampson.
Thanks, Lee. Thanks for having me on the show. Yes, certainly an active market at the moment, and properties are still transacting. Clearance rates have adjusted, as is the case, and we've seen before in markets, having been in the industry since 98 and almost 3 decades of real estate. I've seen changing marketplaces. We've seen shifts in clearance rates, but certainly the skilled auction agents are still running the process and getting great results.
You know, it's interesting. The auction process wasn't actually designed to see if it sells or not. It was actually designed to bring a deadline to a never-ending situation where people have real estate on the market for 9 months, 2 years. So when we come into a change of market, auction is probably more important than ever before in a accelerated marketing program. But the question I have for you is, using that frame, what are you seeing now in the marketplace with the purchasing community behaviour and the owner's feelings? We'll start with the purchasers.
So purchasers out there are probably a little bit more restrained and hesitant, understandably. They don't want to feel that they're overpaying. In saying that, for sought after properties on the inner suburbs that we're selling across Sydney, there's competition and there's buyers out there that are competing well. And we saw that on Saturday. I was out with Damien, which was a rarity for me. I had some sold prize and postponed, so I was able to fill in for Kathleen in our team and spent the day with Damien, and he had a phenomenal day, sold 8 from 8 of the auctions he conducted. And some of the auctions in those inner suburbs were really well competed, but they were only with 2 key buyers really that were pushing each other. But it takes 2 to tango. And if you've got 2 strong buyers that really want a property, they're getting good results. And I think to your point of time frame, and it does become more about reducing days on market, on having the property transacted and perhaps not exceeding reserves by huge amounts, but it's getting the property sold in a reasonable time frame. We're seeing currently about 55% clearance we had last Saturday, hot off the press through our group across Sydney. But it's the properties that are then transacted within a couple of weeks, and then that takes your sell rate to around probably 80%. It's that process that the agents take their buyers and their vendors through in the journey to realise value and come to an agreement on price in a shorter time frame.
What can the agents be doing now differently? Because we've got the change, and the auctioneer has been the grand finale. It's been wonderful, but there's an in-between compression now that a well-informed owner is easy to manage. What would you advise the agents out there to be doing in those critical conversations?
I think for a lot of agents, it's increasing the regular communication with the vendors. So the regularity of their communication needs to be a bit more than what it was before in a marketplace where it's buoyant and there's a depth of buyers and the properties are running to auction. They're also looking at the way they utilise the process and the strategy. So some of the agents are opting to, if they have got a standout buyer and they're far above the pack, transact prior and selling prior on occasion. Though for a lot of agents, it's just that written communication to the vendor, verbal communication to the vendor, and then getting face-to-face with the vendor. So having face-to-face weekly vendor meetings, probably more a necessity in this market than what it might be in a buoyant market. and getting in front of the sellers, also doing private showings with the buyers and nursing the buyers and holding the buyer's hand closely to keep their interest in that property, but also getting them back through the property and showing the vendors there that they're working really hard to get the best result from the market in the current market.
For you, going into these grand finale moments where you're meeting the vendor, sometimes you've got to send the agent away while you have a conversation with the actual vendor. What signals or messages do you want to get across to the owner at this critical time?
Yeah, so at the critical time of auction day, we always remind the vendors we're on their side. We're there to facilitate a sale. Within reason, if we can get a figure that may not be doing cartwheels down the street, but will enable them to transact and move on with their purchase. Often they are working on a deadline, they've purchased elsewhere, they've got a settlement date, and they'd like to get the property sold on auction day. So we remind them we're there to facilitate sale. We'll do the absolute best, and we know as well with the agents we work with, a lot of these agents are very skilled auction agents. They've done the work there to set it up for that conversation. As a third party, we can sort of add, talk about perhaps some case scenarios and or another auction that we may have had that day that may be relevant to them, that's transacted, which got close to the price the vendor was hoping for. And quite often I like to talk to agents and vendors or agents to have a conversation around terms of percentage. So, for example, if you had $1 million property and the offer was, or the bid was at $950,000, yes, it's a $50,000 adjustment, but it's 5%. It's 95% of the price. So for most of us, if we get 95%, not just in real estate, but in life, we're doing well. So that 5% adjustment, or could be a 2% adjustment. So having conversations in terms of percentage can be very powerful. Also, when you're having conversations with buyers, talking to buyers in short amounts, so take me from 950 to 960. When you're having a conversation with a vendor, $950,000, Mr. and Mrs. Vendor, I've now got an offer for you of $960,000, which is unconditional. What would you like to do?
So good. And words is everything.
Yes.
I often speak about this at the Complete Salesperson course, that when an owner says no to an offer, they are now the highest bidder. They've just bought the property back, because you can't release something unless you let someone have it. So when the owner says, no, it's sold to you, no stamp duty this time round, but you're not going anywhere. Not that you can phrase it that way, but there is a reality in saying no to an offer makes you the highest bidder. And if you mentioned that percentage, which I really loved, but if that person is no longer there tomorrow and it goes for another 10 grand less, you've increased your loss. You haven't protected your gain. And I think a lot of owners don't understand that.
Most vendors, particularly in the astute markets or in the eastern suburbs, and if they're an astute vendor and they've been through the auction process before, they have some flexibility. They're not rigid on price. And for the agents, I think just delivering the result, but sometimes as an auctioneer, we can add that third party element in there, or that conversation. If the bidding has stalled and the reserve's at $2 million and the bid is at $1,980,000 and we're wanting to get...
Sound like I'm going to break into full flow there.
We're going to call it on the market. Sometimes just that slight adjustment, which you're talking at 20K, 1%, So just that 99% of, again, what you're hoping for, Mr. Bisman. If we were to call on the market, it's reading the play and reading the situation. I believe these underbidders are going to come again. And what quite often happens is we go well past that 2 million, but it's that glass ceiling figure to break through that 2 million barrier. No one wants to go there first. Like the hardest bid we get is the opening bid, because nobody wants to be first. Like the dance floor, no one wants to dance first in front of everyone on the dance floor. So once you have somebody that breaks through and then it's called on the market, or that we are selling the property, once people know they're playing for keeps and we are selling.
You say that once more.
We are selling.
We are selling.
Once they know we are selling and it's going to be sold, if they don't bid again, they're going to miss out on this property. It's a very different auction. It's a very different auction once the key players know that it's going to be sold. And we see that time and time again, where you think it's petered out and it's like tipping a little bit of fuel on a fire, and it just goes again and it ignites.
Yeah.
And those results can be 2.2, 2.3 million, 2.5 million. And where did that come from? Because they knew that if they didn't bid again, it's going to be sold.
I was watching Damien do an auction for a commercial building down in Double Bay, and the digital bidding was on at the same time, but they'd set the minimum increments to $1 million. So you're watching this thing, and I think it went for 52 from memory. But if you're about to make another offer, big breath, because. But that was the signal as well of we're not playing small here. We're going to have a serious purchaser that goes ahead with it.
Yep, absolutely. And as an auctioneer, we can decide the increments, and Damien's very skilled at that. As are all the auctioneers that work with Cooley in knowing the amount to increase the bid by and to hold the bidding, to keep it at a level that's going to move you to value, and also then if we are at a point where and or depending on price point, that it's relevant to that price point, the increments in which we're increasing, and that the buyers have got the capacity. If we know through the agents and the communication we've had from the agents that we're likely to head here in price, we know that we're going in 50K bids because we know that we're at early twos and we're likely to hit towards the mid twos rather than shortening our stride to $10,000 bids because we know that there's depth from the buyer pool. So that agent auctioneer relationship is very important, and the conversations we have with the agents to know exactly the relevant buyers that are in the bidding pool and where they're going to be likely landing on the day of auction is good because it gives us a sort of insight, and then we know where we can increase, and as Kenny Rogers said, we know when to hold them and when to fold them.
Final question for you: how long have you been auctioneering?
27 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I've seen you do some of these massive acreages out in Dural, then you're out in the eastern suburbs. It's quite fascinating, the variety.
Yeah.
What's your most favourite thing about the auction process?
Look, I think my favourite thing about the auction process is probably twofold. It's probably the elation of the buyers when they secure their home, just the joy and the pure excitement and the adrenaline. And then also on the flip side of that, the elation of the vendors when they get a great result. I think just seeing the pure joy and excitement that I've seen auctions deliver $500,000, $1 million over expectations, like changing lives.
That's amazing.
And one of the auctions that really resounds with is auction down in Canberra back in the early 2000s. And if you think you're challenged in life, this gentleman was both blind and deaf, selling a property, and we had a reserve of $400,000. And the property sold for $420,000. That extra $20,000 meant he could go overseas for the first time with his family. And he was so elated. I remember him picking up the principal at the time off the ground and just with pure joy and excitement. And to see that in someone and how it can change lives is really amazing. And look, I think it is a privilege what we do. Like I remember when Damien gave me this tie, the Cooley tie, and in a nice box, and with such sort of, I guess, reverent respect to the art of auction. And I've come from family growing up in wool auctions and livestock auctions. I've been around auctioneering all my life, and from 95 I was doing livestock auctions. So then transitioned into real estate in 98, and with a good auction. It is that atmosphere, it's that excitement, it's the human engagement that you see, and an adrenaline that you can't be created elsewhere in real estate. And we come off the back of a good auction day, and your adrenaline's really high.
You'd be like Robbie Williams.
It is. It is like Robbie Williams stepping off stage. Yes, it is. It's a great pleasure to work with the agents, the vendors, and the buyers.
Well, Will, thank you so much for appearing on We Are Selling in our brand new studio. We've had
love the studio,
an amazing group of people through today, but it's great to have the street level. You're there in the auction, you're seeing what's happened, and for our audience, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you again in the future.
Thanks, Lee.